The greatest mystery in modern aviation may be on the verge of being revealed after an Australian researcher named Vincent Lyne, linked to the University of Tasmania, published a study in the Journal of Navigation and Explanatory Texts on other platforms claiming that Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 is in a very specific place in the Indian Ocean. Now, 11 years after the disappearance of the Boeing 777, the search for MH370 is about to restart in the Indian Ocean, based on the study and the location indicated by Lyne. In this video, we're going to dive into the facts and theories we have so far and understand, in a simple and clear way, how this study arrived at the probable location of the plane at the bottom of the Indian Ocean. But before we start, if you're not subscribed to this channel yet, I invite you to subscribe so you can always follow our videos about mysteries and real stories that still intrigue us today. And now, fasten your seatbelts. The turbulence is about to begin. MH370 Malaysia Airlines flight took off in the early hours of March 8th from Kuala Lumpur at around 12:41 a.m. local time.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are cleared for takeoff. Cabin crew, prepare for takeoff of flight MH370.
Heading to Beijing, China, carrying 227 passengers and 12 crew members. The aircraft climbed to about 35,000 feet, entered cruise, and everything seemed absolutely normal. At 1:19 a.m., the last recorded radio communication took place.
Good night, Malaysian 370.
A few minutes later, the transponder, the equipment that sends the aircraft as position to civilian radars, simply disappeared from the screen. At that moment, the logical assumption would be, something went very wrong. The plane must have crashed nearby. Except, that's not what happened. Later, investigators discovered that MH370 continued to appear on Malaysian military radar. Instead of continuing straight north, it made a big turn. It turned sharply to the west, crossed back over Malaysian territory, and only disappeared from military radar at around 2:22 a.m. over the Andaman Sea. In other words, while the world believed it had vanished over the South China Sea, the plane had already been flying in another direction for almost an hour. Even without radio, without transponder, without anything, MH370 was still exchanging automatic signals with a satellite operated by the British company positioned over the Indian Ocean. These signals are known as handshakes or pings. Think of it as the plane sending, at regular intervals, a kind of message. Hey, I'm still here. These pings carried two very important pieces of information: the distance to the satellite by measuring how long the signal took to travel back and forth. Engineers could draw a huge arc on the map. At any point along that arc, the plane could have been at that moment. It doesn't give you the exact position, but it gives you a probable line. Whether the plane was moving closer to or farther from the satellite, the frequency of the signal changed slightly because of the Doppler effect, the same effect that makes a siren's pitch change as a car passes by at high speed. By analyzing this change, Inmarsat concluded that, after disappearing from radar, the plane did not go north, but instead went south, toward the Indian Ocean. From Delhi, investigators reconstructed what they call the southern route. The aircraft would have flown for about 7 hours after losing contact, sending pings until around 8:19 a.m., and then probably ran out of fuel and crashed somewhere remote in the southern Indian Ocean. This analysis changed everything. The search moved away from the South China Sea and was redirected to a huge area of the Indian Ocean, southwest of Australia. After this twist, one of the largest search and rescue operations in history began. Malaysia, Australia, China, and several other countries got involved. Ships, aircraft, helicopters, and later underwater robots combed thousands of square kilometers of ocean. Over time, the search became more technical and more focused. They defined a specific segment of the satellite arcs, called the 7th arc, the last estimated position at the moment of the last ping. This arc cuts through a remote area of the southern Indian Ocean, where the plane is believed to have made its final leg. Between 2014 and 2017, about 120,000 square kilometers of the seabed were mapped and searched, an area larger than many countries. They used high-resolution sonars, research vessels equipped with submersible vehicles, and advanced systems to create 3D maps of the ocean floor. The result? Nothing. No main fuselage, no black boxers, no significant debris field. In January 2017, Australia, Malaysia, and China announced the official end of the search, after spending around 155 million United States dollars just on this phase. In the report, investigators basically said, the most likely area has been searched. The aircraft is probably somewhere nearby, but outside the region we were able to define precisely. In other words, they got very close, but not close enough. While nothing appeared on the ocean floor, more than a year later, in July 2015, a resident of Reunion Island in the Indian Ocean found a large piece of a wing. Soon after, French and Malaysian authorities confirmed it was from MH370. This was the first physical piece that proved the plane really had ended up in the Indian Ocean. After that, other parts appeared in Madagascar, Mozambique, Mauritius, Tanzania, and South Africa. Some pieces were confirmed as belonging to the Boeing 777 MH370 TRC. Others were considered probably from the flight, based on model paint and internal codes. These fragments help reinforce the southern route hypothesis and fed drift models of debris, which simulate how ocean currents spread objects over months. But again, no main fuselage, no black boxers, no bodies. It's as if you found tiny pieces of a jigsaw puzzle, but the full picture is still hidden. In 2018, Malaysia released a huge report, more than 400 pages, with the results of the official investigation. Some key points from this report: the aircraft was indeed manually diverted from its route at a certain point. The heading changes observed on radar indicate human command inputs, not just autopilot. The report states that unlawful interference by a third party cannot be ruled out. In other words, there may have been a hijacking, sabotage, or someone forcing the pilots. At the same time, the document says there is not enough evidence that the captain or the first officer planned an act of suicide or something similar. No significant changes in behavior were found, no clear financial problems, and no credible claim by any terrorist group. In short, the report creates a kind of strange balance. Someone probably interfered, but we cannot prove who it was or why. For the families, this was devastating. After years of waiting, the document did not bring a definitive answer about what happened inside the cockpit, nor did it indicate a precise impact location. In 2018, when the official search was suspended, a subsea robotics company stepped in, Ocean Infinity, with a vessel called Seabed Constructor and 8 autonomous underwater vehicles capable of descending to 6,000 meters depth. The company scanned a huge area of seabed. In total, more than 112,000 square kilometers were searched. In a few months, practically the same area that the previous search took years to cover. And what did they find? Nothing conclusive. The search ended in June 2018, without locating the plane. But the story didn't end there. With advances in technology and new mathematical models for the probable route, impact, and debris drift, Ocean Infinity came back to the table with a new proposal for the Malaysian government. In 2025, Malaysia officially approved a new contract with the company to resume the search, this time in an area of about 15,000 square kilometers in the southern Indian Ocean, under a no-find, no-fee scheme, meaning they only receive about 70 million United States dollars if they find the aircraft. The new search, started in 2025, was temporarily suspended in April 2025 due to bad weather conditions, and the government announced it will be resumed on December 30th, 2025 for a window of around 55 days in areas considered today to be the most promising. So, if you're watching this video before December 30th, 2025, know that we are right on the edge of a new serious attempt to solve this mystery. And it is, in this context, that the theory of the scientist who claims to already know where the plane is comes into play. In 2024, an Australian researcher named Vincent Lyne, associated with the University of Tasmania, published a study in the Journal of Navigation and Explanatory Texts on Other Platforms, claiming that MH370 is in a very specific place in the Indian Ocean. According to him, the aircraft would be in a hole about 6,000 meters deep, located at the eastern edge of an ocean floor region called Broken Ridge, or within a broader zone linked to the Diamantina Fracture Zone, in a spot he calls the perfect hiding place, a deep valley with steep walls, filled with fine sediments, surrounded by other depressions. For him, if someone wanted the plane to never be found, they would choose exactly this kind of place. Lyne also suggested that the aircraft did not fall in an uncontrolled freefall, but instead performed a controlled ditching on the water, similar to the famous landing by Captain Sully on the Hudson River in 2009, except in open ocean, in the dark. In his view, the damage to certain parts, like flaps and wing fragments, fits better with a relatively controlled landing than with a vertical high-speed impact. But the part that draws the most attention is, how did he arrive at this specific point? Now comes the explanation in a simple way, so we can understand it better. Let's break down Lyne's reasoning into 5 simple steps that are easy to understand. Step 1. Using the same satellite pings, Ebrian Usis, he took the raw data from the Inmarsat satellite signals, the same ones used by the official investigations, the time each signal took to travel back and forth, which tells you the distance from the plane to the satellite, and the change in signal frequency, which shows whether the aircraft was moving closer to or farther from the satellite. The Doppler effect. Imagine it like this. The satellite is fixed above the Indian Ocean. With each ping, you know how far the plane is from that point in the sky. This creates arcs on the map, but those arcs are huge. He needed more clues to know which part of those arcs the plane actually followed. Step 2. Changing the assumption about what happened at the end of the flight. The official investigation worked heavily with the hypothesis that at some point, no one was controlling the plane anymore. It continued on autopilot until it ran out of fuel, and when the fuel was gone, it entered an uncontrolled descent and crashed near the 7th arc. Lyne makes a different assumption. What if, in reality, someone was controlling the plane until the end? What if, instead of simply falling, this person had planned a controlled ditch-in in a deliberately remote and deep location? When he feeds this hypothesis into the mathematical models that link the timing of the pings, the Doppler effect, fuel consumption, and the performance of the Boeing 777, the result is that the plane would fly a little farther and end up just beyond the officially searched area, further east, toward Broken Ridge. Step 3. The captain's flight simulator, another detail he considers. In the past, the FBI and other authorities analyzed the flight simulator found in the captain's home. There were simulated routes that passed through remote areas of the Indian Ocean. The official investigations concluded that this alone was not proof of criminal intent, because pilots often simulate many different scenarios. Lyne takes one of these simulated routes and does the following exercise. He extends this route, combines it with the satellite arcs and the ping times, and checks where this route matches the Doppler pattern that was actually measured. The point that best fits all of this, according to him, lies exactly in the region of that 6,000-meter hole, the so-called perfect hiding place. Step 4. Ocean currents and the debris that was found. Now comes another part of the math. Ocean currents. Lyne takes this candidate point on the map and asks, if the plane had gone down here, where would pieces of debris float over the months and years? Using drift models for objects on the sea surface, he simulates the probable paths of debris from that location. Then he compares them with the places where real debris was found, such as Reunion Island, the coast of Mozambique, Madagascar, Mauritius, Tanzania, and South Africa. In his analysis, the simulations match well with these findings when the origin point is that deep depression near Broken Ridge. Of course, this is statistical, not absolute proof, but for him, it's one more piece fitting into the puzzle. Step 5. The seafloor as a black hole. Finally, he looks at the topography of the seafloor in that region. And here comes the detail he emphasizes the most. It is an area with very rough terrain, with narrow valleys and depths of about 6,000 meters, and the bottom covered by thick layers of fine sediment. In his view, if a Boeing 777 goes in there, performs a controlled ditching on the water, and then sinks, parts of the aircraft can become buried in those sediments, the irregular terrain can disrupt sonar echoes, and the plane could effectively disappear from the point of view of anyone scanning the area with sensors. Hence the term he uses, a perfect hiding place. Putting it all together, satellite data, the controlled flight hypothesis, the simulator route, ocean currents, and seafloor topography line claims that, scientifically, the mystery would be solved. All that would be missing is to go there with ships and robots to confirm it. There's something important to make very clear in this video. Despite all of this analysis, Lyne's theory is not an official conclusion. Other MH370 specialists criticize various parts of his calculations and warn that it is still too early to say, case closed. What we have as consensus today is MH370 was diverted from its route and flew on for hours. There is strong evidence that it ended somewhere in the southern Indian Ocean. Fragments of the plane have been found on African shores and Indian Ocean islands, proving that it really did go down at sea. Most of the fuselage, the black boxers and the victims, have still not been found. A new search led by Ocean Infinity, in agreement with Malaysia, is set to resume operations from December 30th, 2025, in an area of about 15,000 square kilometers under a no-find, no-fee model. If this operation passes exactly over the perfect hiding place suggested by Lyne, and if he is right, we might see, for the first time, clear images of MH370 on the ocean floor. But until then, the mystery remains very much alive. Before we move on to the final conclusion of this video, we'd like to know your opinion, so write it down in the comments. If you believe that, with the new searches, MH370 will finally be found, type MH370. But if you think the mystery will continue, type mystery. And of course, if you also want to share your theory in the comments, we'll be very grateful to read what you think. Technical failure, human action, a carefully executed plan, or is there still a missing piece that no one has seen yet? More than a decade later, MH370 is much more than just a technical aviation case. It is the story of 239 people who left for an ordinary trip and never came back. The pain of families who, to this day, have no place to visit and no definitive explanation. And a reminder that even with all the technology in the world, there are still things we cannot answer with 100% certainty. Science has already done some incredible things in this investigation. It tracked a plane no one could see, using only invisible pings to a satellite. It used ocean currents and small pieces of debris to reconstruct trajectories. It mapped huge areas of seabed kilometers deep. And now, a new phase begins, with more advanced robots, more precise mathematical models, and theories like Vincent Lyne's trying to point to an exact spot in this vast ocean. But until someone actually finds that plane down there, MH370 remains one of the greatest mysteries in the history of world aviation. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who loves this kind of investigation. We'll see you in the next episode. Thank you so much for staying with us until the end.